There's a reason Kurapika wasn't included in the Chimera Ant Arc, and it's because he would have been too overpowered. So overpowered that his inclusion would have changed the entire balance of the invasion. Now, I know, that sounds insane, but I've been thinking a lot about the possibilities if Kurapika was a part of the palace invasion, and his abilities could lead to some crazy overpowered scenarios, including the possibility of one-shotting a royal guard. But before we get into those, I want to quickly dispel a rumor about Kurapika's chains. It seems to be a somewhat common belief that all of Kurapika's chains are restricted to the Phantom Troop, when that's just not the case. Only Chain Jail is restricted to the troop, so everything else is free for him to use, including the Steel Chain. The Steel Chain has some crazy combinations in the context of the palace invasion, mostly because of this guy. In case you don't know, the Steel Chain basically lets Kurapika steal another person's net ability for a one-time use. This ability can be used by Kurapika himself, or he can gift it to another person if he wants to. This ability does require the use of Emperor time, but that's not a huge deal in this case, thanks to the pacing of the palace invasion. The first possibility I want to talk about is Kurapika giving Moral Perfect Plan. Perfect Plan is Meruem's ability, which allows the user to become undetectable when holding their breath. This would be a great combination, as Moral can hold his breath for an insane amount of time, meaning he could probably hold his breath and sustain Perfect Plan for the entirety of the invasion. But don't forget that Perfect Plan also lets the user make another person undetectable. I don't think this would be super useful for the majority of the punitive force, because almost all of them choose to fight in close combat, but it could be very useful for Kurapika, as he could stay undetected while using Healing Thumb, ensuring people don't get fatally injured while also keeping his abilities secret. This could also work well with Shoot, as he can fight from a range with his disembodied hands. The main drawback of Moral using this ability is that he wouldn't be able to create new smoke once it's activated, as exhaling would deactivate the one-time use. While this is inconvenient, he can create smoke guys or smoke clones beforehand, and make use of them without exhaling. This could allow him to create distractions and gather information on the royal guards from a safe distance. I'm sure Moral himself could figure out even better ways to use this combination, but I can't. So we're going to be moving on to the most broken offensive combination, Shoot with Scream. But before we get into that combination, please consider subscribing. If you want more Hunter x Hunter content, this is the place to be. I upload content focused on this series almost every week, and I also upload multiple shorts a week dedicated to it, and to other popular series like Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen. So if you want top-notch content on any of those series, be sure to subscribe to stay updated. It would really mean a lot to me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. Shoot with Scream is basically the equivalent of a glass cannon in the invasion. Scream can basically cut through any target by closing part of their body in a portal, which severs it instantly. This ability is owned by Nov, who's not a part of the castle invasion, but he's still around beforehand, so the ability can be stolen by Kurapika, but whoever he gives it to only has one shot to make it work. In my opinion, Shoot is the best candidate, with Killua in second. I think Shoot is the best candidate for this because, well, he has the most hands, and he can control them from a distance, so he doesn't even have to get close to a royal guard to kill them. The main problem here is that even with his ultimate technique, he was still getting outsped by Yuppie, and he had to make big sacrifices to actually get into an advantageous position. But he can also carry Meruem, so if he was undetectable when he used Scream, it would pretty much be a guaranteed kill. He would basically be able to land the hit with no issue, and it could definitely get one kill on a royal guard. Shoot with Perfect Plan is just broken in general, as it could let him get way more hits with Hotel Ralphalsia, which traps people inside it once enough hits are landed. This wouldn't kill a royal guard per se, but it would take them out of commission for a while. The real question in this scenario is how long can Shoot hold his breath, because if he can't hold it for long enough, it won't really matter in the end. But even if his lung capacity is low, it could still be useful, as even just robbing some of the guards of some of their senses would be an advantage. Let's move away from Perfect Plan based combinations and move to some more unique ones. The first one I want to talk about is Killua plus APR. This combo might not sound super strong at first, but it depends how APR really works. For example, does APR end after one hit is landed and the ability is activated, or does it end after the opponent goes bankrupt and APR is dispelled? If it is the first option, then we don't really have much going on here. But if it's the second one, then things get kind of crazy. We know for a fact that Killua is able to outspeed Yuppie by a large margin when in Godspeed, meaning that he can probably outspeed all of the guards when the ability is activated. As I'm sure you can assume, this is where a lot of his strength with APR comes from. He can easily land hits and easily dodge hits, allowing him to rack up interest without much effort. The main drawback here is that Killua does run out of electricity if he uses the ability for too long, but this can be circumvented if he finds an outlet, and it honestly might even be an advantage, as it forces him to leave the fight for a little bit to recharge, giving APR more time to accrue interest. Killua also has the advantage of being one of the few people to have a ranged attack, so he can even apply damage while APR is active without needing to be close to the guards or in harm's way in the first place. While this combination isn't quite as sound as the others, it still has a lot of potential, and like most of these combinations, it could be even better if it was paired with Meruem. But there's a whole other host of abilities that could be stolen, those being the abilities of the Royal Guards. Now, I don't think every ability that they have would be able to be stolen, as some like Beelzebub and Metamorphosis are pretty obviously exclusive to the ants. I mean, there's just no way a human could do this. But there are a few other abilities that, if stolen, could turn the tides of the battle. The abilities would probably have to be stolen with a combination of Steel Chain and Perfect Plan, as Kurapika probably wouldn't be able to strike a Royal Guard with the Steel Chain outright and live to tell the tale. Stealing an ability in general would help turn the tides in the favor of the punitive force, as even just weakening the ants in any way is a big deal. So what abilities would be the best to steal? Well, I think it would either be Spiritual Message or Aura Synthesis. Aura Synthesis would be very hard to steal in general, as it is Meruem's ability, and even one slip up would mean death for Kurapika and Meruem. But if it is pulled off, it could give the punitive force a huge advantage. This could especially pair well with one of the combinations we mentioned before, Shoot and Scream. If the circumstances align and Shoot used Scream to one-shot a Royal Guard, and then Kurapika stole Aura Synthesis and gave it to someone in the group, Aura Synthesis could allow a member of the punitive force to gain the Nen of a Royal Guard, which, as we saw with Yuppie, is an insane amount of aura. I think this would probably have to be Killua, as he has the best chance of surviving eating a Chimera Ant thanks to his poison and venom resistance. Now, obviously, this is not a likely scenario at all. The amount of things that would have to line up is kind of insane, but there is one other Aura Synthesis situation that I think could be more realistic, which is giving Aura Synthesis to Netero. We know him and Meruem do end up in the same place, and Netero is probably the only person that could kill a Royal Guard with ease. So if he chose to kill P2 instead of shooing her away, he could very easily get the Royal Guard's Nen, which would greatly help him in his fight against Meruem. This is still not likely, but it's not impossible. The last Steel Chain scenario I want to talk about is a little bit more unconventional, and it's giving one of the Royal Guards Godspeed. This sounds like a bad idea at first, but remember, even they don't have the electricity resistance that Killua has, meaning giving a Royal Guard this ability could actually hinder them. This could be an effective way to get an advantage over Yuppie, as we know for a fact he is vulnerable to being stunned. There are probably plenty of other broken scenarios using the Steel Chain out there, but I think it would be a lot more fun if you told me what you think they are in the comments down below. Plus, I think we need to move on from this chain, as there are other ways Kurapika could influence the invasion without it. As I already mentioned, his healing abilities could come in really handy in giving the invaders some additional stamina, but there's a completely different situation where his healing abilities could be useful. Healing Komugi. If Kurapika went up the staircase with Gon and Killua, he could resolve the entire Komugi situation in a matter of seconds instead of the minutes it took P2. Whether or not this would actually be a benefit is kind of hard to determine, as it could let P2 rejoin the fray while the other two Royal Guards are active. But on the other hand, it could maybe prevent Gon's sacrifice scene. Not that I think that's super likely, but I do think there could be a way to prevent it. If Kurapika was introduced earlier into the arc, he might be the only person that could change Gon's fate. Talking to him about the Kurta massacre and understanding the intense rage and sadness he experienced after Kite's death is probably one of the few ways that Gon could actually succeed in processing his emotions in a healthier manner. Now, obviously, this means we would need a different way to kill P2, but between Godspeed, Emperor Time, Rock, and the Steel Chain, I think this trio might actually be able to beat her. I mean, think about it. Godspeed and Lightning Palm were enough to stun Yuppie, and if you add in the fact that Steel Chain forces the opponent into a Zetsu-like state, weakening their Nen output, a well-timed rock could do major damage to the ant. If Kurapika could steal Terpsichore and give it to Gon after the first cycle, it could make this even easier, as that ability would allow Gon to surpass his physical limits, giving them another advantage. This whole fight would hinge on finishing off P2 before Killua runs out of electricity, because when that happens, it is Jover. But if they manage to crack P2's shell first, that's basically a win, because both Killua's fingers and Arbiter's little finger could secure a kill. If you're curious why I haven't mentioned Emperor Time yet, it's because I don't think it provides enough of a buff for Kurapika to become an offensive unit. It makes him barely stronger than Uvo, and Uvo can't really compare to any of the Royal Guards. So I think Kurapika would be better suited for a very overpowered support role, unless he gets the same training as Gon and Killua did, in which case things might change. There are so many ways Kurapika could be integrated into the arc. If he joins with Kite, literally everything could be different. While it could be fun to explore everything, I think the castle invasion is the most interesting to look at, so that's why we isolated it today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, maybe subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me, and it's one of the best ways to support this channel, with the best way being to watch another video right now or direct monetary support via a membership, but no pressure on that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for another video.